Hey, check out these random DNA blocks that I just found online and have nothing to do with me setting this up for this recording at all. Yeah, this is meant to represent synthetic biology. So you may be wondering, what is synthetic biology? Well, we're gonna go figure out what public misconceptions are and try to clear them up. So today we're going to City Creek to see what people know about synthetic biology, if anything. So, do you know what synthetic biology is?
No.
Do you guys know what synthetic biology is?
I don't actually.
Okay. So clearly most people don't know what it is, but some people at least had a basic understanding or could kind of try to piece together what it meant.
No idea, man. I don't know.
You don't know?
Don't know a whole lot. Sounds like it's like a lot of related to like gene editing and like kind of like modifying things and like synthetically creating things in like a biological setting.
That's like when you like make stuff, right? But like is it like the glow in the dark like hamsters?
I know a little bit. Learned about it in class.
Nice. Who's your teacher in that class?
Tara Deans.
She's so great, isn't she?
She's amazing.
Yeah. Synthetic biology is at its core using a lot of the processes and building blocks in biological systems in order for our own benefits. And so oftentimes this requires manipulating organisms to do things that they were never intended to do, but can do very useful things for us. And so examples are like CRISPR with gene editing. Now it's producing genes it was never meant to. Like making plants be a biomarker for things like TNT when they detect it in the soil. The point is, it's a really large field and there's a ton going on, but the issue is most people don't know what it is. So we tried to ask people what they would guess it is based on the word synthetic and biology. All right, what do you think it is based on like the word synthetic and biology?
I don't really have an idea.
That's fine.
Artificial tissue and stuff. Really? Okay. I just thought of like crabber. I don't know.
Well, synthetic being like man-made, like not organic, I guess, right? And biology, life.
I had to guess synthetic. So biology, like something's made, so like a synthetic arm or like a synthetic part, like a made part to replace like an organic part.
That's a pretty good guess, but it's
more
along the lines of kind of using a lot of like built-in biological systems and kind of like manipulating that for our own benefits, our own goals.
Okay.
So the naming is actually kind of confusing. When you hear synthetic biology, it almost feels like fake biology, so like making biological parts or something. And that seems to be the most common opinion people had, which makes a lot of sense just based off of the name alone. So people would say things like prosthetics, for example, because that sounds like a fake version of biology. And so I guess the naming is a little bit confusing, which probably doesn't help with spreading the knowledge to the public. However, one of the applications of synthetic biology is pretty well known by the public, and that's with like CRISPR and gene editing, just because that's such a hot topic and you'll see it like in news articles all the time and things like that. Because it's such a popular topic, we decided to ask people like what their thoughts were on that and like look into some more of the ethical issues as well and see like what opinions people have.
I mean, I personally don't really have a problem with it, but I know some people do.
Okay. Do you see like any concerns with
I mean,
in the future or something?
I guess. I don't really know specifically, but I suppose there could be something bad that comes out of it. I don't know.
Okay, but you don't have an issue with it yourself.
No, personally.
So have you guys heard of like CRISPR or gene editing or anything like that?
Oh, yes.
What are your thoughts on it? Do you think that's like something we should be pursuing and like using in humans, or do you think that's like something we should be staying away from?
I think it's something we should be staying away from. I don't know, personally.
Do you have any other like? Why do you think that's like something we should be doing?
It's a little risky, to be honest. I don't feel like putting a thought like that.
You know what CRISPR is? Have you heard of it? What do you guys think of like artificial gene editing? Like
going in and like manipulating DNA? Do you think that's something we should be continuing to do, like exploring in the future?
I think there's a lot of moral obligations we have to consider before we started doing that.
And so like what are the biggest moral concerns for you?
And just like ethical concerns of changing your DNA and your genes is kind of, I don't know, there could be some issues with that.
And also I'm a very like conservative person. I'm like very traditional. Like if you're like, you know, I don't know, if you're like born that way, you feel that way. I don't like you get like ethical, moral values and stuff like that.
What about like with plants? Do you think it's more acceptable to do it in something like a plant than in a human, or?
I don't. I mean, I don't mind if it's a plant, but I also don't find a reason to be doing that. And you could just eat.
I can see more of a reason with plants, just to help with food growth. Because we have a big population that's growing to food, so I could see it more with plants and crops and stuff. But I don't know, with animals and humans, that you have another like ethical component that's added in.
Okay, well, what do you think of gene editing? Do you think that's something that we should be exploring? Do you think it's an issue that if we like modify human DNA and things like that?
I don't know. I mean, I guess I've never really thought about it. I mean, I think there could possibly be a lot of medical benefits to that. So I mean, I guess it makes sense. I mean, study of genes, sure. You know, I'm not so sure about like modifying and things like that. I mean, it could have medical advantages, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think modifying human biology is a little, it sounds a little strange. I mean, I understand, I guess we've done that with other life forms, you know, for like feed purposes and things like that. But as far as humans, I don't know. I'm not so sure that that's necessary, really. I mean, who's to say what kind of genes you're editing and why? That just seems morally ambiguous.
I think it can be really good. I think that people can use it for something really good. Especially when it comes to like medical world and trying to like make the world a better place, especially with different like diseases and different things like that. But I mean, there's always different perspectives on it, whether like you can take it a negative route.
Yeah, and so I think like one example is like, what if you knew your child was gonna have some sort of like debilitating disease or like cancer or something, but you could go in and modify that? Is that something you would do to like stop to like give your child like a healthier future?
I personally would, honestly, just based on the fact that it's like, I know that they're just gonna struggle more in life, and I would rather my child not struggle more in life.
Well, from like my biology class, like CRISPR is like a tool that can be used for gene editing, right? And so, my thoughts, I think there's cool things you can do with CRISPR. Like there are beneficial genes that can be edited in certain organisms that could be beneficial. Yeah, I don't have that many opinions on it.
What are your thoughts on like using it in humans and like modifying their DNA?
I don't know actually. That's a tough question. I think like ethically, like that's like the primary thing. It's an ethical question whether or not it's okay to modify the genetics of humans, right? So I would lean towards that no, but there are special circumstances where maybe.
So have you heard of like CRISPR and gene editing and things like that?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, probably only like extreme examples of like, could you edit your baby to have like blue eyes or something, or could you edit them to be like a certain height to express like desired genes? But then I guess like another would be like, could you edit like genetic predispositions out of somebody? Like I guess that would be another end.
Yeah.
So, am I close or am I?
No, that's exactly it actually. And so I'm wondering like, what do you think about that? Do you think that's something that we should be pursuing and we should be eventually like doing, is like modifying human DNA, or do you think that's like a slippery slope to go down?
Yeah, so I would say yes and no. Like, yes, I think we could edit human DNA, but like, no, probably as of now, because there's no agreed upon standard to what it is to be an acceptable and flourishing human in the scientific field. And there's differing standards, right, all around, right? Is a genetically flourishing human 6'1"? Is a genetic flourishing human have blue eyes? And like those might seem like trivial things, but they do matter, right? There's not a standard of a flourishing human in science, and I don't think as of now science has really determined what a flourishing human is. Does that make sense?
That does.
So I would say no, because there's no agreed upon standard in the sciences on what a flourishing human is.
So what if like your child you knew was going to like develop some sort of like debilitating disease or cancer or something like that that's obviously really bad, and you had the opportunity to go in and modify their DNA so that doesn't happen in the future? Is that something you would do, or is that also something you would avoid until there is that agreed upon standard?
Yeah, so you'd say like we have the capability where they won't develop cancer. I know you're painting like a hypothetical. It's a hypothetical like like they're going to develop cancer at 2, or they're going to develop cancer at 60. That's different, right?
It is.
That's really different.
That's part of
I don't know a lot of children under 5 who develop cancer.
Yeah, usually what happens is you'll find like a gene that's mutated, and that leads to cancer down the road, maybe in like their adulthood, like their 20s or 30s.
Okay, yeah. So even then, I would have some really big hesitations, right? Because do you know if there's been like a massive amount of studies that show the like return on investment on that? So like if we edit that one gene, that doesn't trigger anything else to happen down the road, like in their teens. Like trying to save them in their 20s. Would that actually hurt them in their teenage years or in their adolescent years?
Yeah, so usually, like at least for the basic examples, a lot of times like we'll see a mutated gene, and that gene is often used for things like causing apoptosis in cells, so like killing ones that would eventually cause cancer. And so you're basically just like fixing the mutations that you see in a gene, for example.
Okay. And is there been like a good amount of data shown by fixing that mutated gene? Like there hasn't been any other like causes that were intended? Like is there evidence for that? Like is there recorded evidence for that over like with rats or with pigs or?
I would assume yes, because I've heard that like at least this one specific gene I'm thinking about, like they found that that's its main goal, is to like help the cell like stop reproducing if it isn't reproducing properly.
Okay.
And so like the idea is that like that gene is found in everyone else, for example, and like this is just a mutated one that even like neither of the parents had.
Okay.
So in that case, do you think that's something you would want to go in and change?
Let me think about that for a second.
Yeah.
I think my first response is no, just because I don't think there's an abundance of evidence out yet, but saying that we know like change, but saying that there is an abundance of evidence, that there's been a good amount of data collected and it's editing this gene to stop a genetic predisposition to like a cancer from apoptosis. Like I think I would be fine with that editing. However, I think I would struggle with like how much knowledge do we really have of predicting how somebody will end up in 20 to 30 years with that, because once again that there has to be a lot of data collected on that, right? And that I do think that like would create some kind of slippery slope in a way, right? So because I'd ask, what's the end goal of that editing? Is it to stop a cancer, or is there a greater end goal of like making a human live to 100? Is that what it is to live a flourishing human life, is to live to be 100 years old? And those are just a lot of questions that science can't answer, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So I would say a hard maybe. And there's going to have to be a lot of evidence doled out before that.
I think the possibilities for it are incredible. I think it's really awesome that we have that capability. But I would like to see a little bit more just kind of upfront what the implications of the CRISPR technology is going to be used for, because we could do a lot of damage with it, but it could be helpful in other ways.
So, like, are you okay with like modifying things like plants or bacteria?
Yeah, I do. I think that's fine. It's where we start changing the human body is where I think it starts to get limited.
So, like, what if like your child was like you knew they were gonna like develop some sort of like debilitating disease or something, but you had the ability to like go in and modify that gene and get some evidence. Is that something you would do personally?
That's a hard one. It's really hard. But right off the bat, yeah, I think I would. But it would have to be available to everybody else in the world. It's not something that only I would get that like possibility for my child. I think it'd have to be fair for everybody. Otherwise, we're going to have some large social issues that arise from that.
I'd say there's definitely benefits. Like, I think there's a lot of health issues people can struggle with that, like, if we did have genetic modification, that could be really helpful. My one concern is, like, the ethics of getting there. Like, how do you do the testing in a way that is, like, least harmful? So it can bring out that good, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And then like the other question I have is, what do you think is like an acceptable level of like confidence before we actually start implementing it in people? Like you said, like currently a lot of modifications are things we stay away from in humans because one of the reasons is we don't know the side effects. So to you, what do you think is enough to know before it is okay to use it on humans?
I mean, roughly, like, I want to say, okay, this could be off, because I like research like the vaccine stuff, and I know like it's roughly like the flu vaccine is usually like 85% effective, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'd say probably around there, like
Okay.
if, especially because like I know like if you do like some gene stuff, like I don't fully know how to explain it, but I know like if you mess up with your genes too much, like that can cause like cancer, like, and I know that happens with like radiation and stuff like that. So I think like unless you were like to the point where you're like, okay, like I could be confident that this would like help someone, then that's probably
Perfect. So you can see that there's a lot of different responses, and most tend to fall into the categories of I don't really know too much about it, so I don't care that much about it, or it's people who tend to be like, I don't know, it could be a slippery slope, there's not much use for it. Especially with modifying human DNA, people tend to be very skeptical, and people are like, I need data, I need to make sure this is okay, available. And so I think that tends to be the general consensus, is that with plants and bacteria, people don't really care, and we've been doing that for a while, so it doesn't matter if you care or not because that's being done. But with humans, most people tend to be like at a maybe or a no and are saying we need to gather more data or look more into this first. Finally, to wrap things up, I just asked them random questions about terms in synthetic biology. I didn't expect anyone to get these unless you took the class, and I didn't even ask the guy who took the class these questions. So I just wanted to see what kinds of responses people would say to them.
Do we look hot?
Sure.
And so, like, when I say the words mammalian genetic toggle switch, what does that mean to you?
Nothing.
Nothing. There we go.
Where I go.
Okay, and when I say like the words mammalian genetic toggle switch, what does that mean to you?
That makes me think of like a video game with like animals. I don't know. It's probably not what you're looking for.
No, I don't expect anyone to know this. I just wanted to see what people would say. No, so like the idea is like you can basically have like two like groups of DNA that like a mammal would produce. And so the idea is like if you're producing like on one side of the DNA, then it kind of inhibits the other part. And so then you can like do something to switch it, and then it produces this side which inhibits the other part. So it's kind of like a switch to produce the kind of gene that you're more interested in at the time. And so that's like an example of like the kind of DNA modifications we're interested in, because that way you can be like, only do this thing when this thing is present, for example.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And so that's mainly been studied in like mice and stuff, and like with the glowing mice, that's part of it, is like they only glow when a certain thing is present, and that helps you test whether or not your system is working properly.
Oh,
Like
interesting.
like do they always glow, or do they only glow when you put in the inducer that should activate that effect?
Interesting. So like the point wasn't just to see if they could glow, it was actually to like.
I think initially it was, but now that we can effectively get them to glow, now it's to kind of use that as like an obvious indicator that this is working or not.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
When I say the word quorum sensing, that's Quorum. What does that mean to you?
Quorum sensing?
Yeah.
Not really sure.
Alright, well, that's basically when just like a bunch of bacteria or some organism can like identify once there's a high enough concentration of them.
Okay.
So there's this cool example of like this one like bobfish, which it has like bioluminescent bacteria, but they're only luminescent when they're in high enough concentrations because they secrete a certain protein, and only in a certain concentration of that protein do you get them to actually do certain things. Yeah, well, thank you for your time, and thanks for recording the video.
Yeah, of course.
That last guy was Jeff. He was the cameraman, so thanks to him for recording the video. And with that, that's basically all the main responses we got from people. And I think this was a really interesting exercise. I think the only thing we could have improved is maybe also going to college campuses and seeing like what the students there know, because students will probably know more than the general public about these issues, but that's for a future video. There was one other thing where this one person was talking about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, and they said that it like changes your DNA. Ooh. So there have been a lot of misconceptions about this, especially online, about how like mRNA vaccines are changing your DNA or something, which obviously they don't. If you know about the central dogma of biology, you'll know that unless you have like reverse transcriptase in your body or something, which you shouldn't have. I don't know why that would ever be in there, and then that converted it to DNA, and then you had something to break your DNA sequence in all of your cells. It's not going to affect your DNA, right? You can't even change the DNA of all of your cells at the same time. It's literally impossible. Okay, that's not the point. The point is that the Johnson & Johnson one isn't even an mRNA vaccine. It uses an adenovirus vector in order to put the genes into your cells that then make the spike protein so that your immune system can recognize it. And so I guess people are scared that like you're putting a virus into your body, but it's also like a modified virus. It's not even dangerous. Thankfully, this was like the big misconception that we've seen throughout the day. Other than that, most people just like didn't understand most things, and it wasn't like harmful information that they may have heard. So what are the conclusions from this? The main one is that the public just doesn't know too much about biology in general. And I think with most sciences, that's an issue where a lot of times we'll have a lot of really cool advancements and then people just don't know about it. And so, like, of course, in the scientific community, people will. But outside of that, like in the public, you can see a lot of people don't even know things like what is synthetic biology, and they don't even know what CRISPR is, and they understand the basics of gene editing. But, like, if you don't even understand what genes are, how do you have an opinion on something as crucial as gene editing in the future? And so the point is that there needs to be a lot more education. And so, like, while I did help explain some of these things to these people specifically, everyone needs to be educated about topics like these. And going into the future, I think we need to start looking into how to better educate the public on these issues. And it's not an easy question. I don't expect any one person to have the answers. So the conclusion is learn how to teach people. And if you don't, try to learn on your own. There's so much interesting stuff out there, especially about biology. And the sciences are so interesting. And also, if someone's watching this who isn't grading this, take Dr. Dean's synthetic biology class if you're at the University of Utah. It is very cool and very interesting. And I think even though I doubt I'm going to go into the field, it has so many cool applications that you get to learn about. Also, you get to do a project like this, and I actually had a lot of fun making this. So it's a fun class, and you should definitely take it.